Welcome to Disabled Expectations. When you're a dad raising a child with a disability, nothing is as you planned. These are the raw, honest stories of dads whose lives changed the day they heard a diagnosis and who continue to show up, adapt, and fight for their families every day. This isn't about lowering expectations, it's about redefining them. I'm Andy, and this is Disabled Expectations. Well, thanks for joining us today. Man, we've got another good show. I'm excited about this one. This is my man Jeff, and we met at a place that, you know, is so typical, so average. It was trunk or treat, and we didn't even have a costume on. We met, got to know him just a little bit, and then he came out to a Certain Hope Community Dads event and hurt all of us in paintball. And so I've been mad at Jeff for a long time. I think I'm still sore underneath my rib because of you, but
I think I still walk with a slight limp.
What's that?
I think I still walk with a slight limp crawling around the paintball course.
I think you army crawled more than you actually walked. It was amazing. But thanks for being on the show, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been getting to know Jeff more. We are a part of a dad's group. We don't have a name. I feel like we need to name it somehow. So if there's any guys out there, yeah,
least creative one of the group. I feel like that's something Cam can come up with.
Yeah, he would be good for sure. But we pray together, read a few verses together, encourage each other, and it's been like one of my most favorite things that I get to do, and so I hope you have enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, but definitely filled a hole that I had in my life of kind of that guy's time, because you know you get so focused on work, and then any time away from work is I need to be with family. So it's been really great.
For sure. It's been, man, I feel like I need like this robust vocabulary to describe. Like I come home and I'm like, Laura, it was awesome. I feel like I'm like a middle schooler or something. I don't know. All right. Well, let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I don't know, whatever, like tell us a little about yourself, and then let's do like, you have any hobbies or anything you do for fun?
Yeah, definitely not in this season of life.
Okay.
But born and raised Washington State. So moved out here, met my wife while she was attending Moody Bible Institute in Spokane when they still had a campus out there. So I was not a Moody kid. I was an Eastern Washington kid. But we met actually pushing carts at Costco, dated for a bit. And then she said, "Hey, I'm moving home to Michigan to be closer to my family. I want you to come with." And I'm pretty sure I said, "Where's Michigan?" You know,
come on.
But she moved. I followed her about 6 months later. And then about 6 months after that, we were married.
So you were working at Costco together, or you like bumped carts together in the parking lot? And like
both.
And it was like a Hallmark movie.
No, working at Costco. So she had started the summer before I had started there.
Okay.
But when I grew up in a little farm town in southeastern Washington State, moved up to the big city, Spokane, which is about the same size as Grand Rapids. And started working at Costco there. And, there was this cute girl that I got to work with every day. And I bugged her enough that, she agreed to go out, and here we are. It's almost 10 years later now.
Do you remember your first date?
Yeah, so it's a bit of controversial topic around the Weir household, because our first date was very much like a pizza place, hang out by a bridge. And then for her, that was not it. That was the first date was 4, 5, 6 months after that, because we were just friends for that first part, but there was no friend zone, not a chance.
So how long have you been married now?
Yeah, it'll be 8 years in August. So
Okay.
7.5 or so.
Wow. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you've been in Michigan your entire marriage?
Yep. Yeah. So we
Okay.
got engaged December of 2016 and then moved in February of 2017. I did. She was already here. And then got married August of 17.
All right.
So
what?
yeah.
So if you had to compare Michigan and what was the state? I've never heard of it. It was
Washington.
Washington. What would be? What's the best? Well, you said you didn't know where Michigan was. So
Yeah.
I had to give it
fair
back.
enough. Fair enough.
What's the biggest difference, would you say, in states?
Yeah. I mean, everybody talks about the weather. The weather isn't really all that different.
It rains there like all the time, right?
So on the west side, it does. I grew up on the east side. It's actually a
okay.
desert, so it rains quite a bit less there than it does here.
Wow.
But the gray is different. So
what do you mean by that?
I don't remember a time where we weren't playing baseball outside on Valentine's Day. So it was cold, but there was sunshine. There was all the things. So we got the cold, we got the snow, but it wasn't gray until the middle of May. There's actual sunshine.
Actual sunshine.
What's been really like 2025, this winter, there's been a whole lot more sunshine than any other year since I've been in Michigan. So that's just been incredible. But the winter blues hit our house hard every year. And you see it coming and you're like, oh, it'll be better this year. And it never is.
No, it snowed. Did it snow yesterday? Like we had flurries, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy, like, if it snows, I want like 3 feet.
All the snow. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember my first year in Michigan. I was in an apartment downtown, and I had a picture on my phone from May 1st that there was snow on the ground, and I was like, "What is this? This is horrible.
What am I doing?
Yeah, why am I here? But
I love it.
But and then missed the mountains. I took nature for granted for sure in Washington, and just the scenery and stuff. Michigan's pretty flat. I remember the first time I came to meet Michaela's parents and landed, and we're driving from the airport to her parents' house. And I said, so you guys like really don't have any mountains here, like at all? And she goes, oh yeah, we're going to go out to Cannonsburg tomorrow. And I was like, oh, cool, great.
Cannonsburg.
We drive out to Cannonsburg and she's like, this is it. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, what? I grew up on a hill taller than this, So,
oh man,
that's brutal. By the same token, I had never seen a lake that you couldn't see across.
Oh,
so Lake Michigan's an ocean, right?
For real.
Yeah.
Superior. Yeah. Like they're next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always heard too, like the clarity of our lakes is rare.
Yeah.
Which I like, because I don't swim if I can't see the bottom. Okay. That's not happening. I got problems.
New fear unlocked. It's all good.
Right. All right. So almost 8 years of being married, which is exciting and great. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, 2 boys. I've got a 4-year-old, and then I've got an almost 2-year-old. He'll be in 2 in another 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
So, Tucker and Landon. So we waited. Michaela and I had a pretty rough start to our marriage. Getting married at 21 and 19 is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
So we had to figure out how to be married, and we had some great people in our lives, and figured that out sort of ish.
Right, I was gonna say, did you figure it out?
No, figured it out enough. Figured out what worked and what didn't work, and we still are working on that piece because what worked yesterday doesn't necessarily work today. But
right.
We waited until we were both out of school, And Tucker was born the February after I graduated college. So
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So how old is Tucker again?
Tucker turned 4 in February.
4. Whew.
Yeah. So he's a whirlwind. He's a
Those
whole
are
lot
fun.
of fun.
Yeah, those are fun years.
He's very much in the stage of like towing the boundary. So it's a fun time right now of like, I know you just told me that I can't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to stare at you while I do it.
Right. Yeah.
So
what do you mean by no?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
all right. I love it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Landon is he's your pass onto this podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He's been my pass to a lot of things in the last couple of years. Yeah.
So
Landon,
tell me a little bit about Landon.
Yeah, Landon has Schaaf-Yang Syndrome. Schaaf-Yang Syndrome is a kind of a cognitive and physical disability, genetic syndrome. It was mapped in 2013, so it's still pretty fresh.
Whoa.
In the genetics world, it's a baby syndrome. So much so that Dr. Schaaf is actually still actively researching.
Wow.
And he's a German geneticist that spent some time at Baylor down in Texas. But he, just like you guys with Briella, like you guys see a lot of doctors, right? He's hands down the most down to earth doctor. And so we've met him twice now at this medical conference that gets put on annually. And he's just an incredible human. And loves the kids. There's a few kids that kind of go back year after year to this conference that rotates cities in the U.S. But he's building out a research team in Germany. The Schaaf-Yang community is very, very blessed to have. Michaela calls it this tribe, right? So like you never pick this tribe. If you had a choice, you're not going to pick to join this tribe. But the people in this tribe, between their advocacy, their fundraising, their engagement, it's incredible. So
yeah. So tell me a little bit more about Schaaf-Yang. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
So is that like a 1 in? A 1 in, like a big number? Is it rare? Is it?
Yeah, super rare. I don't even know what the 1 in big number is. There's about 400 people in the world that's been diagnosed with it.
That's rare.
Yeah. So,
whoa.
It's a mutation of the MAGEL2 gene, which shares with Prader-Willi. So Prader-Willi is a lot more common.
I haven't heard of that either.
I haven't heard of that one. That one's more like 1 in 150, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's quite a bit more common. Hyperphagia, hypotonia, those are pretty common. Intellectual disability with Prader-Willi. I guess hyperphagia, difficulty eating. And then Prader-Willi, when we were first researching it, the Genetics for Dummies type website we landed on was Prader-Willi are families with kids with Prader-Willi are the ones who have locks on the refrigerator door. Because you go from like a child who can't process food and can't eat it to a teenager who overeats and becomes morbidly obese.
Wow. Okay.
So they don't have those like sensors that tell you you're full.
Wow.
So they keep eating. But so Schaaf-Yang is kind of in that other region of the MAGEL2 that Landon will suffer. He's 2, so we still don't know all the things, but will suffer from cognitive disability. He's got some mid-major physical disability. He does roll over a little bit at almost 2, but he's not walking. There are kids that are older that do end up walking. But it's a spectrum, just like so many of these genetic things, right? So some kids are on trachs and they can't communicate, and they're,
Right.
they're wheelchair bound for life. And there's others that we've met that they do walk, and they do talk, and, there's disability there, but much less so.
Right. Do you have a sense of where Landon falls?
Not really yet.
Okay.
We're hopeful that he will be able to walk still, but it'll be on his own timeline. But he's in physical therapy every week. He's in occupational therapy every week for feeding. So he gets his food through a GJ tube. So
Okay.
a G tube is just a normal feeding tube, and a GJ is one that, as you probably know, goes a little deeper into their system to prevent reflux. But
Yep. So tell me about the birth story of Mr. Landon.
yeah, so I don't know how much time you got, Andy, but the birth was pretty traumatic.
Okay.
Just we had zero idea that there was
Oh,
anything wrong in utero.
really?
So
Wow.
I had been gone 3 weeks leading up to Landon's birth because my brother got married at the beginning of May in Washington State. So I went out there a week early for like a bachelor party, and then helped out during wedding week, and then we left shortly thereafter. But Tucker and I flew out there. Michaela stayed home because she was too pregnant to fly.
Okay.
But like super pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So I had taken off 3 weeks of work, and then I was supposed to go back to work on a Monday. And
Oh
I said,
boy.
well, I'll just go in late. I'll go with you to this doctor appointment. It was her 38-week check-in or whatever. And so we went to go see the midwife, and the midwife says, his heart rate's a little low. I'd feel more comfortable if you just went downtown and sat on the monitors for a bit. And we said, okay, this had happened before at, a couple different times. They had said, oh, his heart rate's a little low. We're going to go. But
Yeah.
she always like checked out. It was fine. Which, like, looking back now, I would, if this were to happen again, I would ask a whole lot more questions. Right. But
Right.
at the time, you're relying on the medical professionals that they're not expecting anything like this.
Yeah.
So we get downtown, and I was the jerk that was pushing to get her induced so that I didn't have to go back to work, because I got some pretty generous paternity leave from in public accounting. So well, maybe, we're not sure. And then they do an ultrasound, and they said, yeah, things aren't quite where we would feel comfortable. So, like, this is your second child. You can go home if you want, but if you want to be induced, like, go for it. And we were like, oh yeah, let's be done. Induce.
Yeah.
So we went upstairs, and we had a blast all day long. We hadn't seen each other in 3 weeks. We didn't have the toddler, like we were playing games. We really hit it off with our nursing staff.
Wow.
And so then 12:45 rolled around, and the nurse came in, and again, she was an angel. Her name was Maddie. She's awesome. But she came in, and Michaela was kind of sleeping, and she said, I'm just going to adjust the heart rate monitors a little bit. I think they got bumped. And then it was like her face turned white. She's like, I'm going to call the doctor.
Yeah. Just because.
I was like, oh, okay. Still like standing up at this point, but not really sure what was going on. So the midwife came in, tried to get, Michaela was up and like trying to get something because they couldn't find a heart rate. And then OBGYN came in, and it was like mission mode. They tried X, they tried Y, they tried Z, and it said, okay, we're going to emergency C-section.
Yeah.
So it was 19 minutes from the time of, I'm going to adjust the heart rate monitor, to here's your baby boy, he's going to the NICU.
Whoa.
So Landon came out, wasn't breathing, super purple, almost black. And Michaela was doped up, right? Like emergency C-section, they pump her
sure.
full of everything. So NICU doctor was like, "Hey dad, like you got to come with me." And I was like, "But my wife's here, lying open on the table."
Yeah.
She said, "No, you're coming with me. We're going up to NICU. I need you." So somehow get to the NICU. Don't really remember that part, right?
Yeah, it just got to be a blur.
And so there's at least 10 medical personnel working on Landon up in the NICU. And I'm just like, what do I do? Standing there. I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
So
That's what they say. They always say, like, you can tell how serious the situation is in the hospital by how many people are in the room. Like,
yeah,
10
yeah,
that's a lot of friends.
yeah, a lot of friends. So the neonatologist sat me down outside and said, "We have no idea what's going on, but we think that your son is a good candidate to get iced." And like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
Yeah. Let's
and
pretend
they
I've
were,
never been in this situation before.
yeah, right. So they were seriously considering putting him like on ice to slow everything down to figure out how best to go about this.
Wow.
So he's on a ventilator, and that, like, it was touch and go, right?
And
And
you're still by yourself at this
right,
point?
yeah, and Michaela had no idea what had happened, what was going on.
Man.
So she's like back in the maternity ward, and I'm up at Helen DeVos, which, like, Helen DeVos, man, you're in the same camp, I know, but we are so blessed to live in West Michigan and have Helen DeVos here.
Yeah.
The closest, I joked for probably the first year that Landon was born that the closest I had ever gotten to Helen DeVos was selling balloons for Children's Miracle Network at Costco.
Oh boy.
And otherwise we were a healthy family. Like, we
Yeah.
never,
Wow.
and now we're spending every day we're spending 24 hours a day at Helen DeVos. And so the first couple days, of course, the scariest. Is he going to survive? Is he coming off the vent? So he's on the ventilator for 14 hours, and then switched to CPAP, but couldn't stabilize his breathing. Bruising started to fade around week 2, but he was still pretty jaundiced. So it was like day 3, they said, "Your son's got cerebral palsy."
Oh.
And I go, "Okay, well, I'm familiar with cerebral palsy." Again, that's another spectrum, right, of people. But you start grieving the fact that, like, oh, he may not be able to play baseball, right? Because I was a baseball player. So you start grieving, like, oh, he probably won't be able to play baseball. Well, then a couple more days go by, and doctors rotate, and another doctor comes in there, and he goes, "He's kind of got crooked fingers. That's not normally a sign of cerebral palsy. That's normally a sign of something else. So I'd like to get a hold of a geneticist if that's okay with you." I was like, I don't care. We've maxed out, like, we've soared past our deductible. Like, call every doctor in the world if you want. I don't care.
It's 19 minutes it took us to get past that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'll tell you this little piece, and then I'll go back a bit to telling Michaela. But so geneticist came in, said, you were diagnosed with CP? And we're like, yeah. She, like, got frustrated, like visibly frustrated. And she goes, "Kids shouldn't be diagnosed with CP within a month of being born. Like, that's a diagnosis that you should get a year later, not this. Like, this is a genetic syndrome. I want to run rapid genome testing. Here's what that means. Here's what it looks like. It's blood work. It's sending the vials off to California, blah, blah, blah." So we did all that, and came back with Schaaf-Yang. Going back to like the night of, right, that night, Again, it was 19 minutes from, I'm just going to adjust the heart rate monitors to we're heading to the NICU. Right. So, Michaela had been sleeping. And then she's like trying to wake up, and it takes a while for Michaela to get up when she's healthy. So it was one of those things that she was groggy, and then it's like, oh, here's all of these drugs, right? Because we don't want you to feel any of these things. So she's like groggy, and I'm like praying with her while she's on the table, like, God, protect us, protect this child, protect my wife, all the things.
Yeah.
And she's like out of it, gone completely.
Wow.
So after, it was probably a few hours in the NICU before we were down to 3 friends and not 10,
Right. Yeah.
And so I went back over to the maternity ward, and the nurse, Maddie, again, was crying, like outside of Michaela's room. And, my mind goes to the worst place, right? Of like,
for sure.
Is she still alive? And I, like, Maddie, like, what's going on? And she, right away, she saw it on my face. She's like, she's okay. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
What's
Jeez.
like, what is your problem? And she goes, I've been doing this a long time, and that is the most traumatic birth that I've ever, been a part of. And
wow.
So I'm like, okay, well, I guess if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, kind of deal.
Yeah.
Well, then the midwife comes around the corner, and it wasn't how midwifery works in at least the group that Michaela was a part of, is they have on-call midwives, just like they would have an on-call doctor. So it wasn't Michaela's midwife that was there for all of this. It was somebody a part of Michaela's midwife's group. So she didn't know me from Adam, She came around, she saw the nurse crying, she saw me like visibly upset because son's in the NICU, wife's hanging on,
Yeah.
And it's like coming over pretty defensively of the nurse, like, what's going on here? Like, is everything fine? And like Maddie again, like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm just like processing. And so I asked the midwife, I said, what happened? Why did we end up here? And she goes, I wish I knew. But there's a few things that I need to share with you to give you some peace of mind. So when moms go under for C-section, they lose a lot of blood, right? Several pints, three pints of blood is not uncommon to lose in a C-section.
Okay.
An emergency C-section, even more so. And again, I'm not a doctor. This is just what I'm being told. But she said Michaela lost less than a half a pint of blood based on how fast she was opened and closed by this OBGYN, who, again, I found out, a day later that she was brand new to Corewell. So right then, I get chills thinking about that. But like right then and there, you knew that God placed the right people in the room.
For sure.
So that was pretty incredible.
Man.
And so we had that conversation. She's like, you should, check in with Michaela, but then you should probably go back up to the NICU because these first 24 hours are critical. So I go in, like, how much does she know? How much does she remember? And am I going to be the one breaking the news to her that our kid's in the NICU and like he may or may not survive? We don't know. So she had some idea that he wasn't okay. But we didn't have any answers. So she's asking questions. It was like, I don't know.
Right.
And she was too tired and worn out to even be like herself, and the sense of, I can hear her saying now, like, what do you mean you don't know?
Right.
So that was, so she, emergency C-section, took her probably 4 days of like hard recovery. But then a lot longer after that. And then, so Landon was in there for 38 days, I think 36 days, maybe.
In the NICU total?
In the NICU. Yeah. So and then like on week 1, Michaela ended up with the flu. So she got discharged from the hospital, but then couldn't come back to the hospital.
Okay.
Because you're not allowed in the NICU with the flu, right?
Right.
So I'm running back and forth between our home in Ada and Helen DeVos, but staying up at Helen DeVos, and then my in-laws stepped in for our oldest, Tucker. My best friend was clutch. Her best friend came and stayed with us for a few days from Detroit. So we kind of had the crew out, and they showed up and showed out. So that was, I don't know how people do it without a community.
Right.
But yeah, so that was the birth story, I guess.
Whoa. Like that's traumatic, my friend. And
it's not something you easily forget, for sure.
No. Do you remember what, like, okay, I just trying to process like all the questions I have right now. When did you first get to go home and like kind of get a break, get a shower from the NICU? Do you remember that? Kind of a random question, but
yeah, I was probably on week 3.
Okay.
So he was in a pod. So there there were all the babies, right? And there were a couple nurses that were assigned to him. And he was in there, and I didn't spend much time away from the hospital when he was in the pod.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much there. And then I think he moved out of the pod on week 3 because he had to be quarantined because he caught whatever Michaela had, or Michaela caught whatever he had, or I don't know, whatever, chicken or egg kind of deal. But he ended up with the flu, ended up being quarantined on kind of that separate wing of the NICU. So we ended up with our own room. And had to do the whole gown up, mask up, glove up thing, right? So it was about that time that I started, going home to shower versus showering at the NICU. And so that.
Do you remember your mental stage of like, because that's like going back and forth. So like a lot of stories, you hear, there's obviously this child and there's this traumatic birth sometimes, or there's like, sometimes parents know or don't know, but you've got this child and your wife in different locations, like not in the same room. You're having to go back and forth. You're the one that is, at the critical moments, you're the one they're talking to, not being able to communicate really with your wife and talk to her and get her feedback like you guys normally would do.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like for you? I think I would have like freaked out.
Yeah, I mean, it was survival mode, right? So there was not much happening. Thankfully, like during the time where Michaela couldn't be there and it was just me, there was so much unknown. Man. So there wasn't really any decisions to be made. There wasn't any new information. It was like, we're trying to keep this kid alive.
Right.
And so it was like, yeah, whatever you need to do, right? Whatever I need to do, let me know. And it wasn't until Michaela got over the flu or over it enough. Maybe we bent the rules a little bit. I don't remember. We definitely did.
It's Mama Bear.
Yeah. But we, by that time, that's when kind of those more critical decisions needed to be made. And I remember, so we live we live about 14 minutes from Helen DeVos. And uh, uh, and I remember that we were waiting on the not a neurosurgeon, but the neurologist. Okay.
Yeah.
And because that, like, everybody's like, oh, you got to talk to the neurologist, And we were waiting on that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to run home and shower because I'm out of soap here in our little travel size thing. Right. And so I go home, and I wasn't really taking my time, but I probably wasn't rushing.
Yeah.
And I step out of the shower, and Michaela's calling me, and she goes, hey, the neurologist is here.
Of course.
It's like, nice. So 6 minutes later, I'm running through the corridor at Helen DeVos. And made it just as like they were wrapping up, and she was able to, like, the neurologist was still there, and I made her repeat everything,
Yeah.
But it was, the mindset was, we're going to do whatever it takes. And we want all the information.
Right.
So when the geneticist said, I'd like to run your blood work, we were like, why wasn't this run a week ago? And so now with that, like, there's people, how, like, they say there's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
Michaela and I have never been the flight or freeze type people.
Okay.
Maybe with each other, there's some flight. We tend to avoid with each other, but with something like this, like, we dug in. We had tickets booked to the medical conference with the founding doctor before we left the NICU.
Whoa.
So we were doing all the things, and as soon as we got his diagnosis, we found this first steps guide. So the parents who came before us with Schaaf-Yang children, they put together this pretty comprehensive, almost like a brochure of, like, welcome to Schaaf-Yang, like you're entering some resort, right?
Yeah.
Of, like, these are the things that you should line up before leaving the hospital, as far as physical therapy, occupational therapy. Think about hydrotherapy. When the kids get older, they really benefit from music therapy. And all these different things. And then now there's treatments, not like treatments for Schaaf-Yang, but human growth hormone is a huge benefit, and the sooner you start on it, the better it is.
Gotcha.
And so, getting started on that, and there's another drug called oxytocin that has seen some really positive. We haven't been able to get Landon on it, but there's a few babies that have gotten on it, and they just seem like they're further ahead even than Landon is, even though Landon might be a year older. So there are certain things, when I say, like, the tribe we're in is, like, solid, they're so selfless in the sense of, we had to go through these hard things, but if we can help the next person get further than we ever did, absolutely, let's do that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow. So hearing all that, which, by the way, I appreciate you sharing. I've never heard all. I think I've heard a very little. What I find happens is, like, I don't get to meet the dads, but, like, Laura, my wife, is like, yeah, I've been friends with with their wife for, like, 7 years on Facebook. Like, what?
Sure.
I don't know how they do it, but I appreciate you sharing that. What is it for you that kind of got you through the first year of, like, all the wild, crazy, uncertainty, scary? I mean, I can go on and on, but what was it for you that's, like, kind of grounded you and Michaela and allowed you to come through it, and still great parents, still in love with each other? Share all your thoughts.
Yeah. There's a lot there, but it was very much like we didn't have a choice.
Okay.
Right. So, like, you either dig in or give up, and we weren't going to give up. And so that's what, and I joke with Michaela that when Tucker was born, I did like 45% of the work. Like I'm not naive. She did most of it, right?
You're probably rounding up, but yeah.
But I did like 45% of it. With Landon, it's truly been like 98-2. She when one of the a former coworker of mine, had been kind of following the story and knew I was off and on with work and all the things, and he'd said like, "Oh my gosh, like, how are you doing? How do you do it?" and all the things. And I joked with him that like, I'm not much of a video game guy, but I can understand the concept of playing a video game and you reach, this next level and all these abilities get unlocked, right?
Right.
different superpowers or whatever.
It's a great illustration.
Well, when Tucker was born, Michaela unlocked a few superpowers, right? She became an incredible mom, better partner.
Yeah.
But when Landon was born, it was like level up times 4. And all of a sudden she's this awesome advocate, this incredible researcher, she's pretty organized in general, but organizing it all, making sure that Landon's getting into the therapies he needs, and fighting with the insurance companies because they're trash. And so she deserves all the credit. I show up, I put a few dollars in our bank account every month, and do the dishes. That's kind of
hey, that's huge.
But she's the one who grounded me. She's like, we can do this.
Wow.
And so it'll have to be a separate interview with her because I don't know what her answer is.
Right.
She's definitely more grounded in faith than I am, and has always been. But that I probably missed a few of the questions, but
no, that's good. I had mentioned we met at Trunk or Treat, and that was actually at your church. And so I'm curious, were you at that church when Landon was born? And if so, how did they come around you?
Yeah. So we were, when we first got married, we church hopped a little bit, just because Michaela didn't want to necessarily go to the same church that she grew up in, and she wanted to be, she's a different person now and all the things.
I get that.
Well, then Blythefield Hills at the time opened up this new campus about the time we were church hopping, and her parents were like, we're going to go to this new campus to, support it or whatever. And it was closer to our house at the time than the one up in Rockford. We're like, yeah, it's a smaller church feel. I kind of wanted the smaller church. The big production that the flagship campus has was not really for me. And so we started going to Northview pretty regularly. We weren't every Sunday, but it was most Sundays for a while, I think. And so we had actually led a small group that was based out of that church. And it kind of had started to disband a little bit, but not quite. We ended up fully disbanding when Landon was born, just because we didn't have the capacity anymore. But
right, for sure.
So the church itself, we weren't super plugged in. We were plugged in the sense of the Veal family history. Michaela's family, her mom was super involved. Her dad was an usher. So they were super plugged in.
Yeah.
And we kind of got the ancillary benefits, I'll call it, of that. So we went to church, but we're actually still not members. It's on my bingo card for 2025 to finally become members of the church. But had met Don Pearson, who's kind of the campus pastor or lead pastor. I don't know, guess what his official title is there, but he's a great guy. And he had texted me. I can only imagine, because my mother-in-law was shooting out hey, they need all the prayers, right? She's really
Right.
good at that. But he had texted me. He's like, what's going on? What do you guys need?
Good.
And so I had sent him this long text, kind of giving him an overview of what happened. And they he gave us money. There were girls. We had a rental property at the time that we were converting from an Airbnb to a long-term rental.
Okay.
And there were women from the church that came and like completely cleaned the house so that we could get a renter in there like now compared to
Wow.
waiting. There was meals provided. So about all the things that you want from a church community,
Yeah.
we got without like being a part of being super invested, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I like hearing that. I like
Yeah.
that the church surrounded you and did what they could practically to help you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. And
And being
it continues, right? Like we had our septic field fail in November of that same year. Um,
of course.
and yeah, right. Like why wouldn't it? And so I was like septic fields are $15,000, right?
Yeah, it's just right check.
Yeah. And so I was like getting quotes. I was like, I don't know how we're going to afford this, but maybe like we're going to have to figure it out because we can't have sewage backing up into our laundry room, right? So I get a text from Don on a Sunday night, and he goes, "I hear you're having a poop issue." It's like totally his style. I
That's
don't know the man that
perfect.
well, but like he's that guy. And I kind of laughed. I said, "Yeah." So he called me, and what's going on? I explained it, and he goes, "Okay, well, have you signed a contract?" And I go, "Contract? What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, like, are you having somebody come out and fix it?" And I go, "Oh, well, I need to call this guy back tomorrow because this guy said, nope, don't do it. A friend and I will be out tomorrow to look at it." So him and another gentleman from church came out, and on there, big burly dude. And you can tell he's a teddy bear, but like looks like a gorilla. Um,
Yes.
and he digs his foot into my grass that I had just planted, tears it up, and I'm like, who's this guy? Like digging up my new lawn. He goes, "Is it just sand here?" And I go, "Yeah, pretty much." He goes, we can take care of it. And I go, "What?
What
Okay,
does that mean?
what does that mean?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it." And I'm looking at Don, and I'm looking at this guy's other's name. His name's Don also. So I'm looking between the two of them, and I was like, that's not going to work for me. Like, what? You got to give me more. And Don Pearson goes, "Jeff, like, do you trust me?" And I go, "Barely,"
For being
um,
honest.
and he kind of chuckles. He goes, I'll fill you in what needs to happen." Well, so this was in November, and um, things didn't happen for a couple weeks, and I'm chomping at the bit. Like, we're about to
Yeah.
leave to go visit my family for the holidays, and Don just keeps saying, like, "Jeff, like, trust me, I've got it handled." Well, he's in the background organizing all this stuff, and I get a call from my neighbor on like December 23rd, and he goes, "Hey, you got like some bulldozers driving back to your house right now. Is everything okay? I thought you guys were in Washington, And I said, "We are, but So I called another friend, and there was like 15 guys there, and they replaced our drain field in like 3 hours.
What?
Yeah. Uh, and so the price was cut and then cut some more and then cut some more. So we,
Jeez.
I had told Don at one point, like, it's never been easier to count my blessings in life as it has been since this child entered it.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
really
hard,
cool.
but people show up.
Yeah, I love that because it's so many times people don't know what to do, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. But like people don't know what to do, so they don't do anything, and that kind of sucks.
Yep.
Like there are some things you can do to help, and I
Yeah.
always say coffee and meals are like, I mean, top two for sure.
Yeah.
But I always like to kind of ask guys, through the process, and Landon's 2, right?
Yep.
So you've got 2 years under your belt. What kind of journey have you been on with your faith through the last 2 years? I always like to hear the different answers. Obviously no wrong answer, but
Sure.
what would you say to that question?
Yeah. Probably lots of highs and lows. It's really easy to see the Lord's hand when things are going really well.
Yeah.
But when things aren't, it's like, why? Like,
Right.
why? Growing up, when people asked what your biggest fear was, for me, it wasn't, spiders or snakes or water you couldn't see the bottom of. It was, it was having a child with special needs.
Are you serious?
100%. And so
Wow.
I had a boss at the time, that it was super supportive. He was a partner at the accounting firm that I worked at. He showed up. He came and sat with me in the NICU. Just incredible person, awesome human. Him and his wife both. But I had shared with him, like, this is my biggest fear coming true. And he kind of chuckled and he goes, I think that might have been God's way of preparing your heart.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I was like, I hate you. Like,
That's awesome.
Just right into it. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. There's been a lot of tears. But
sure.
That I think that my faith has been challenged in ways that I never thought were possible. Grew up in a broken home, thought, had kind of worked with this chip on my shoulder, and thought if I can get through that stuff, and my brother and I beat the crap out of each other, if I can get through that, I can get through anything, right? Well, this was a couple levels past that. So having mentors and role models for me has been kind of this. I don't want to say that it's been successful, because it's definitely been hit or miss, but there's one guy in particular that we found him and his wife when Michaela and I were kind of going through our marriage trials when we were first married, and he was a big part of that, and just kept pointing me back to God. And because I can only imagine that it would have been really easy to turn your back on God when stuff like this happens, right? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Certain Hope's mission statement is, the most under-churched community is the community with families of disabilities. Right?
That's like a real statistic.
Yeah. So I totally see why, right? Like, you're going through these hard things, and yes, the Bible has all these stories about these men who went through these incredible trials, but it's different reading about it compared to living it.
Absolutely.
And you can't blame the child for being born with disabilities. You can't blame your wife for growing a kid, so you blame God. And you don't blame sin. You don't blame Satan. You blame God, because he could have fixed this, right? And so it probably depends on the week of where I'm at with that, and what's going on. I think there's just like being a part of the dad's group and how encouraging that is. We have some amazing gentlemen, and that,
agree.
Of love your children, show that you love your children. And one of the dads had challenged that. Right. And so what does that look like? what does that look like for a 2-year-old who can't communicate and is screaming all the time because he's constipated? You know,
Right.
So trying to make a more active effort with that has improved my viewpoint, I think, on just the relationship with Christ.
I like it.
And how that goes.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's good too, man. You're good. You're good at this.
It's a good host. You're asking good questions.
Okay. I wanted a couple questions about Landon.
Yeah.
What is he like today? Will be the first question. I'll let you answer that. Then I have another one.
Okay. So first one, Landon is so happy.
Awesome.
All the time. Lots of smiles, lots of giggles. He started, he would giggle every once in a while. I don't know, maybe around the 1 year mark. But I feel like within the last month, it's been like, you can make him giggle.
There's nothing like
that has been a game changer as well, right? Like that interaction
for sure
has been pretty special. So he's super happy. He's not mobile. He's very floppy, so he's got hypotonia. So the lack of muscle tone. And they're working on that. It's been a while since I've been to a physical therapy appointment. Michaela typically handles all that because she's the superhero. There apparently has been some pretty good strides from the physical therapy and getting him to hold his weight on his legs, and he can't balance, but holding his weight and stuff. I think we finally found a food blend. So one of the biggest challenges that we faced in the last year is weight gain. Mm-hmm. So he's almost 2, but he weighs 14 pounds.
Okay.
So like I've a friend that gave birth to a child bigger than that, right? So which that's horrible, but
which is a large child. I mean,
right.
You're birthing a 14-pounder.
That doesn't sound great, but so he's not even on the chart, like on the growth chart, right? So way underweight, way malnourished, kind of like setting off alarm bells of like, do these parents need to be investigated? Are they starving their child, kind of deal? But so I think we finally have found a solution. And when I say we, I mean Michaela has found a solution for a home blend food that he tolerates well.
Okay.
And I think he started to gain a little weight in the last couple of weeks. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So being a dad, and we have some similarities in what I'm about to say, but being a dad and having a child that, is nonverbal, non-mobile, the feeding tubes, all the stuff. What are some of the things that you do with Landon that give you some great joy?
Yeah. It's definitely the making him laugh type stuff.
Okay.
So because of his reflux, you can't I remember throwing Tucker up in the air and freaking Michaela out, right? Of like,
for sure.
Tucker loved it.
It's a classic dad move.
Yeah, right. Can't do that with Landon,
right?
Because he will throw up all over you. And it's not like what's the term? It's not like spit up.
It's like projectile.
It's like stomach bile.
Okay.
So we're not throwing him up in the air. We're not tipping him upside down.
Yeah.
But making him giggle, whether, he's really into peekaboo right now. He loves his older brother. I feel like Tucker's presence just makes him laugh. So that is absolutely the highlight. I probably struggled being bitter with him and just his life and what that meant for me.
Right. That's heavy, man.
Until he started giggling. And then, he's sitting there giggling. How can you be bitter with that? Right. So
yeah, there's some about that. I remember I honestly, I didn't know if Briella would ever laugh. Like I just we didn't know if that was an option. And I remember the first time she laughed, I was just like, I was a mess.
Yeah. Crying.
Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh man. It does. You said it right. It is a game changer. Like to hear that laugh and the joy coming from your child is like, okay.
Because there's so many other times where like you can tell that they're just in pain.
Yeah.
Right. Or uncomfortable. And it's like, I don't know how to help you.
Right.
So to have the giggle is
to hear that laugh, and it's almost like they're saying, I'm okay. You guys are doing a good job. I love you. You know, it's like all those things just in a laugh. It's so cool. All right, last question. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up. But what do you do to take care of yourself in these times you find yourself in?
Yeah. I love spending time outside. So again, Michaela does pretty much all the heavy lifting. And she is an amazing partner in the sense of like, if I had a really tough day at work, I will come home and she can see it on my face and I'll be like, I'm going to go spend some time outside. And she goes, okay, you know, and half the time she hates it. And half the time she goes like, yeah, well, at least she's getting stuff done outside. You know, we live on 3 acres, so there's no shortage of outdoor projects. But that in this season of life, that's probably the only thing that I do. The dad's thing has been huge for me as well. Kind of getting away, getting out.
So are you like chopping wood outside? What are you doing outside? Are you just like standing in the yard, staring at the trees? Like what's happening?
Yeah. So the property we bought was neglected for about 30 years. So we have a lot of it's in the woods. So we have down trees everywhere.
Wow.
And every time the wind blows, our yard fills with sticks. And so between, you know, picking up leaves in the fall, getting rid of brush, vines, things that were way overgrown.
Right.
Sawing up trees, splitting wood. Yeah. All those.
So you're pretty good with the chainsaw?
No, actually horrible. So what's funny is the guy that I was talking about earlier, that him and his wife kind of stepped into our lives. He was like the head of forestry for Consumers Energy.
Oh yeah.
The
baller.
big utility. So he is like the chainsaw guy, right? I've learned everything. He would be ashamed to watch me with a chainsaw now. It's been a while since we've like worked side by side together, but he taught me everything I know, and I'm just still horrible. But good enough to like get the job done. But I remember when he came over to help one day after a storm, we had lost a bunch of trees. He had spent pretty much all day cutting with his chainsaw on our property without sharpening his chain. And I go, Dale, like what do you mean you don't have to sharpen your chain yet? Like I've sharpened mine twice. Like how does that work? And he goes, well, if you keep your saw out of the dirt, you don't have,
you're always hitting it in the dirt.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
So adequate. I'm not, if I feel like I know my limits. If there's something I was like, I don't know, I'm just calling Dale. He lives right down the road.
Can you drop it between like the house and your car confidently?
It depends on how far the car is parked away from the house. So we have like a fenced in area that is going to be a garden eventually that had like a man gate, right? Like a very standard, like 3-foot gate. And there were 3 trees that were fully grown in this fenced in area that I wanted to take down so we could put a garden in.
Yeah.
And I go, I'm not gonna be able to take these down without like destroying the fence. Right. So I called Dale, and I don't know if you've ever seen a woodsman like go to work. But it's one of those trades that you watch them and you're just in awe when they're like doing their craft. Welding is the same way. You see a welder do a perfect bead, right? So I say, Dale, can can you drop these, or do we need to take out a section of the fence in order to like save the fence? He goes, no, we should be okay. So I go up to the house to get my pair of gloves.
Yeah.
By the time I get back down, he had dropped all 3 trees, one on top of each other, through the gate.
Whatever, Dale.
I'm just like, I'm looking at him. I was like, really? And he's laughed. What? You know,
so he obviously has a mustache.
That's what he did for 30 years, you know? So,
Dang.
It's incredible.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm thankful for you giving me some time, man. I feel like your story is a good one for guys to hear and be encouraged by. I appreciate.
Well, I feel like a novice hearing some of the other dads, you know, flying down to Texas or getting half brains removed. Like, I feel like our story is nowhere near that.
Don't get caught in the comparison game. But you guys are from the sounds of it and from what I know, you guys are a great team, you and Michaela, and I think that is just an incredible example in and of itself. And then how you guys handle your situation is awesome. So thanks for being open and honest with what's going on with you and Landon and the crew. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being on the show.
No, well, Andy, you and Laura do incredible work. So we're really thankful for Certain Hope and thankful to be a part of that.
I appreciate that, Jeff. All right, thanks a lot.